time to review another futuristic Steven Spielberg film. Minority Report. Minority Report was released in 2002 and actually came out in the same year as Catch Me If You Can, another Steven Spielberg film that I absolutely love. Anyway, Minority Report, like I said, is directed by Steven Spielberg and has music, once again, by John Williams. And this time the film stars Tom Cruise in the leading role, as well as Colin Farrell, Samantha Morton, and Max Von Sydow. And basically, this film is based on a book by the same name. I haven't actually read the book, so all I know is what I have seen in this film. Anyway, basically, like AI, artificial intelligence, this film is also set in the future. However, unlike AI, this film is actually only set in 2054. We follow the story of John Anderson. John Anderson, played by Tom Cruise in the film, and he works for this pre-crime unit. In this futuristic world, which this film is created, there are pre-crime units which are able to predict crimes before they've even happened. They're able to predict crimes through these three precog twins. I think that's what they are. These three precog twins are able to see these crimes before they even happen and are able to predict them. And we see that in the openings of the film. However, jump to a bit later on in the film, and we meet Colin Farrell's character, and complications start occurring with his character. And at the same time, we also learn about a tragic backstory to do with John Anderson's character, in which he's lost his son, and he don't know whether his son's alive, dead, or simply just missing. And at the same time, John Anderson, who works for this pre-crime unit, is accused of a future crime. So then John Anderson, played by Tom Cruise, becomes a fugitive, and the pre-crime unit that he once worked for is now after him, whilst at the same time, he's trying to get away from this pre-crime unit, and he's so convinced that he's not going to commit this future crime. However, soon he learns about a Minority Report from Agatha, played by Samantha Morton, who's one of the three precog twins who were able to predict future crimes. He learns about this Minority Report, where basically the three twins can disagree on how a future crime is going to turn out. There can actually be an alternative reality. However, it's not as simple as you may think. It turns out to be one of those ones where you kind of know where a situation is going to lead to. You kind of think, okay, yeah, John Anderson's going to commit this crime, but you don't know the events leading up to him committing the crime, and also, is he going to commit that crime? Is he, or is something else going to happen, or what? We don't know. But this is one of those films where you see the outcome of a situation, but you don't know the events leading up to that situation, and also, do you know the outcome of that situation? And at the same time, the final act of the film, Max Von Sydow's character is thrown into the mix as well, in a very unexpected way. Basically, that's the plot of the film. There are some other stuff that's thrown out there. For example, I did touch a bit on John Anderson has his tragic backstory in the film, which actually becomes quite important in the film. He loses his kid, and that's kind of his backstory, but at the same time, it does place some significance in the film. This is one of those Spielberg films which people don't really talk about. Like, about if you've seen Minority Report, the chances are you haven't. But I actually think this film is fascinating, it's different, and it's clever. It's not one of the best Spielberg films. I do have some criticism to do with this film, but ultimately, the majority of the film I like quite a lot. One of the things I like so much about this film, which AI didn't really do, is the fact that this film has a nice balance of futuristic and real elements in this film. That's just shown through the first scene in this film. For example, in the first scene of the film, we introduce how this pre-crime unit works. In the opening scene of the film, we see that his husband is finding his wife in the act having an affair with another man. So he's going to kill his wife, and the pre-crime unit sees that going to happen before it's even happened. And basically, in this opening scene, we see how the pre-crime unit works. We see how John Anderson works in this pre-crime unit. And basically, in a very tense opening sequence of the film, we see this nice balance, this nice combination between the futuristic element and these real elements just in one shot. You just get this shot of this neighborhood, and then you just see this roundabout. You just see this roundabout going about, there's a kid on this roundabout, and then all the people who work in this pre-crime unit just hop down on ropes into the shot, and then the camera tilts up, and we see this spaceship which the pre-crime unit came on. And it's just that nice combination. When you think about it, it's actually quite smart. Spielberg managed to combine futuristic elements and real elements quite nicely together in this film. Then, like I said, it's a very intense opening sequence with quite a lot of shaky camera movement, which works really well, and we see the way that this pre-crime unit worked, and ultimately they get good results. Anyway, sign off for a sec. Like I said, this film was made in 2002, and it's actually managed to predict some of the things that are happening in this world today. But when we see the pre-crime unit work in the openings in the film, they use a lot of swiping. They use a lot of swiping on the mechanisms that they have in their unit that they work in. And bear in mind, this film was made, before smartphones were really even created. Before we have, tablets, before we had, even laptops nowadays, you can swipe on them. But this film was made before you could do any of that. And this film actually predicted that. And also, a lot of eye scan in the film that happens by later in the film. And even some of that's happening in today's society. Now it still happens in today's society, though. It still does. Going back to the plot of the film, we kind of meet Colin Farrell's character here, and he plays a antagonist in the film. He's not the main antagonist, because I'm not going to give away who the main antagonist is. He plays a antagonist in the film. I must admit, I have seen this film once before, about a couple of years ago now, and I completely forgot he was in this film when I watched the film last night. I completely forgot. I was like, oh my god, Colin Farrell's in the film. I completely forgot. But yeah, it's absolutely fantastic in the film. I just completely forgot he was in the film. As the film continues, John Anderson, played by Tom Cruise, is accused of a future crime. I really like this twist. He's accused of a future crime by this pre-crime unit, which he works for, and so he soon becomes a fugitive in this futuristic world. And like I said, it's one of those films where you kind of know where the story's heading, but at the same time, you don't know how it gets there. And also, do you know where the story's heading? Do you know if John Anderson is going to commit this crime? Is he going to commit this crime? Isn't he? Or is something else entirely different going to happen? We don't know, and we see the events leading up to it, and then we see that scene finally happen, and I really like that idea. It doesn't happen that much in the film, and it's actually quite a clever idea, and seeing the events leading up to that crime take place. For example, when John Anderson's on the run, we get introduced to his tragic backstory. We learn about why he's no longer with his wife anymore, and we learn about what happened to his kid. Because basically, as we see in the flashback scene in the film, he lost his kid at a swimming pool. He doesn't know whether his kid's alive, or dead, or just simply missing. And it adds a bit of characterization to the character. And even so, yeah, it's a bit of a generic plot. Yeah, like, yeah, okay, his son's missing, that's a bit generic, happens quite a lot in, you know, film and TV nowadays. It actually works quite well in this film. It works because it comes quite significant in the plot of the film. Not to give anything away, not just thrown in there, simply to give some characterization to John Anderson's character. It actually plays some significance, and I like that it's in there. Yes, it's generic, but it works. Then we get this scene with the robotic spiders, and I actually love this scene. First of all, this scene's got a fantastic musical score by John Williams, which is really coming out in this scene. It's not roaring, at the same time, it's there, and you can hear it. What I love so much about this robotic spider scene is basically these robotic spiders have come from this pre-crime unit, and they're scanning people's eyes. They're trying to find John Anderson, because the pre-crime unit is after John Anderson. In this scene, the spiders are sent into this apartment complex, where they think John Anderson's character might be, but they're not entirely sure. So they send these spiders in, just get an aerial shot from above of all these spiders going into this apartment complex, and they can slip under floorboards, they can slip under doors, and they're going into people in this apartment complex, and you just see this apartment complex on an aerial shot, and you just see people, they're arguing or doing something else, and basically these spiders, they go into these rooms, and the people just stop arguing or doing whatever they're doing, and they'll just get their eyes scanned by these spiders, and then the spiders will just slip away. And it's such a fantastic scene, because Spielberg does quite a lot of films, but it's all done in one shot, it's all done in one take. The camera doesn't cut, it's all done in one shot, and the camera just tilts as we go around this apartment complex, and these robotic spiders go into each of these apartment rooms and scan people's eyes, and it's such a fantastic scene. That's my favourite scene in the whole of the film. And even though it isn't an absolutely, you know, amazing scene in the film, I loved it because it had a great score in that scene, and also it had robotic spiders. And who doesn't love flexible robotic spiders? But anyway, basically as the film continues, John Anderson goes to get Agatha, one of the 3 Peacock twins who are able to see these future crimes. He doesn't learn about the Minority Report from someone else, but he wants to know for certain if it's actually true, if Minority Report can actually happen. So he goes to one of the 3 Peacock twins, known as Agatha. Agatha is played by Samantha Morton in the film. She does actually say, you know, me and my siblings, you know, the 3 Peacock twins can disagree. John Anderson is still on the run, but this time he's got Agatha, so he's even more on the run, you know. The Peacock unit is really after him now. One of the things absolutely fantastic about this scene is there's one moment in this scene where, you know, the pre-crime unit is after John Anderson and Agatha. All these members of the pre-crime unit look straight in their direction, but because Agatha and she can predict the future, John Anderson and her, she drags John Anderson behind this set of balloons. So basically they're looking in this direction, but they're just looking at these balloons, and they don't actually realise that John Anderson and Agatha are right behind these balloons. And it's such a fantastic moment. I actually watched an interview with Spielberg, and he said he came up with that scene on the spot, and that's fantastic, you know. Then we get this fight scene between Colin Farrell's character and Tom Cruise's character, John Anderson, and that's actually a fantastic fight scene because in this fight scene we have this zapping gun. It's a gun which, when you use it, you know, you aim it at someone, and when you fire it at them, the person who gets affected by it just bounces back a mile. Then we get the crime scene where John Anderson is meant to commit this crime. Does he? Does he not? Or does something else entirely different happen? And I'm not going to say what happens, because I've already touched on this in the review quite a bit. Something happens in the scene that I thought was incredibly clever, and I absolutely loved this scene. This is probably one of my favourite scenes of the film, if not the robotic spider scene, which I actually love. But this is probably one of my favourite scenes of the film, and I thought it was absolutely fantastic what happened here, because the film almost built up to this moment, and then this happened, and I was like, oh, I didn't expect this film to go here, wow. But then we get to the third act of the film, and Max Von Sydow's character, who we did meet in the first act of the film, is thrown back into the mix. The thing is, with this third act of the film, it feels quite like a fourth act almost. It feels like the third act's part 2, but its own act. And that's my big criticism to do with this film. I'm not saying the last act of this film is bad, the final act of this film is bad, I'm not saying that. But it does feels disjointed. It doesn't feel right with the rest of the film. Because up until now, we've just had this on to John Adams guys on the run, the pre-crime units after him, and then we just get this whole third act, which is like why the pre-crime unit exists. I'm not saying, you know, the third act was bad in any way, because there's actually a theme in the third act of the film which I thought was really, really interesting, which was brought up in the third act of the film, which I'm not going to give away in case people haven't seen the film, but there's something really interesting in the third act of the film which was brought up, and I was like, wow. But it was kind of out of the middle of nowhere. Like, that storyline had been brought up like once in the first act of the film, but then it had been talked about for the rest of the film up to this point. I was up to the third act, so I was just be like, oh, we're talking about this again? Okay. Like I said, it's not a bad third act. I think Max Von Sydow's performance in the third act is brilliant. And I think Tom Cruise's character is even more interesting in the third act because he's more developed by this point. But here, it just felt disjointed. It almost felt like Spielberg could make 2 films just out of this one film alone. It almost felt like, you know, Spielberg, you know, he exaggerated some of the plot lines in the third act of the film, maybe used some of the plot lines in the first 2 acts of the film into the third act of the film. It almost feels like it could be 2 separate films in itself, you know, Minority Report Part 1, Minority Report Part 2. It almost feels like it's a different story, and it just feels disjointed. It's not a bad story, it just feels different, and it's good, it's just not as good as the rest of the film. I did like the end of the film though, and actually, I did hear some people criticise the end of the film, saying Spielberg doesn't know how to finish films, and actually, I think he did a fantastic job finishing this film. I really like the end of the film. But anyway, I like this film. I'm actually a huge fan of Minority Report, and I actually think it's one of the most underrated Spielberg films. I really do. But it does have its criticisms. Like I said, the whole third act of the film, or the whole final act, it's not really the third act, it's a fourth act almost. But the whole final act of the film just feels a bit disjointed. But also, the cinematography takes a bit of time to adjust to. Like, when I look back on it now, I really like what they did cinematography of the film. Basically, they try and make it look surreal. Because bear in mind, this film is set in the future, it's set in 2054. They try and make the film seem surreal just through the shots they look at. Because on some of the shots in the film, you see like the white colours on the shots look specifically white. The white colours are really shiny, and at the same time, the black colours are really darkly black. And it adds like some surreal effects on the cinematography on the shots of the film. And it's a really good effect because it adds to that whole idea of this bleak, dark, futuristic world. But at the same time, it just took a bit of time to adjust into. Other than that, I really don't have any huge criticisms to do with the film. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a flawless film. There are definitely some plot holes in this film, but the thing is, I just find this film fantastic. I think it's fascinating to watch a film back in 2002 that can still predict parts of the future that are still happening now, and the way Spielberg manages to combine these realistic elements with these futuristic elements in the film. But yeah, I really like the future elements of this film, and because it's a Steven Spielberg review, I have to review the John Williams soundtrack, and I like the John Williams soundtrack for the film. It works well with the film. Unfortunately, that's all I can say about it. It works well with the film. It's not a soundtrack where you can really listen to on yourself. Like, if you look at some of the John Williams early soundtracks they did with Spielberg, take a look at Jurassic Park, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., or even Close Encounter of the Third Kind. Those are soundtracks which you can listen to without the film, and it would still have that overriding, you know, joyous effect of the soundtrack. Unfortunately, I can't say that the same about Minority Report. I tried to listen to this soundtrack by itself the other day, and I must admit, there's no distinctive or memorable themes in the film. I still like the soundtrack for the film, it works well with the film, just not very memorable within itself. All in all, I think the film is really well made. Spielberg did a superb job making the futuristic elements of this film. There's a lot of fight scenes, a lot of action sequences in the film, which work really, really well, and I just think Spielberg did a superb job making this film. Is it Spielberg's best film? No, but at the same time, I didn't think it had to be. It's enjoyable, it's well made, and I actually had a really good time watching this film. It's intriguing, it's fascinating, it's got a good score, it's got really good direction, and it's got my favourite Tom Cruise performance. And just before I get my rating on the film, I just want to say one more thing. This film did quite a controversial thing at the end, and I think it left you with quite a controversial moral. It kind of brought up this whole idea, is pre-crime a good idea at the end of the film? I'm not going to give it away the way it did that. Basically, they're like, no, pre-crime isn't a good idea. On the surface, if I just said to you now, pre-crime, you know, being able to stop crime before it's even happened, you'd be like, well, that's fantastic, you can save millions and millions of lives, but at the same time, the no at the end of this film is, maybe, no, it's not the best idea, and I actually think that's kind of daring, and I really like that. Is pre-crime a good idea? Not really, actually. But anyway, all in all, I'm going to give Minority Report an 8.7 out of 10. I think this is one of the most underrated Spielberg films. I actually think, you know, not enough people talk about this film. It is fantastic, it is really well made, and I highly recommend it, especially if you're a Tom Cruise fan, especially because he's got a really good performance in the film, or even if you're a Steven Spielberg fan, and you haven't watched this film, if you like both those, you know, both those factors, Tom Cruise or Steven Spielberg, or even if you just like one of those factors, if you're just a Tom Cruise fan, you like his films, or even if you're just a Steven Spielberg fan, you like his films, I really recommend this film because it's fantastic to watch. It's futuristic but at the same time realistic, and I thought it's absolutely fantastic to watch. All in all, I'm going to give Minority Report an 8.7 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of Minority Report? Do you love it, do you hate it? Or have you just not watched it? And if not, why not? Please do comment below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Obviously, I really do recommend this film. It's a futuristic film with a twist, and it's really interesting to watch. And I just thought it was absolutely fantastic and fascinating and great at the same time. All in all, I really do recommend Minority Report. And if you haven't watched it yet, I seriously think you should. But anyway, just to say once again, I'm still watching and reviewing a handful of Spielberg films right now. So look forward to my next Spielberg film review, which I haven't decided what it's going to be yet. But look forward to my next Spielberg film review very, very soon on this channel. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this video. And look forward to many more, both film and TVs and Spielberg film reviews coming very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon. Goodbye for now. Bye.